health-related information on the following show provides general information only. Content presented on any show by any host or guest should not be substituted for a doctor's advice. Always consult your physician before beginning any new diet, exercise, or treatment program.
Welcome to Accelerated Health TV and radio show. I'm your host, Sara Banta. I'm a health coach, natural supplement expert, and a busy mom of 3. Make sure you hit the subscribe button below so you're notified every week with my new podcasts on Mondays and Tuesdays. And if you haven't already, join my free group coaching on Telegram with the link below. I teach you on a daily basis with tips and tools to enhance your health, and you will be a part of a like-minded group to support you on your journey in addition to truly taking control of your health. My goal is to reach everyone on earth with eyes to see and ears to hear my message of healing. So help me with that goal. Share this podcast with a few of your friends who may need my help, and it's working. We are in the top 10% of globally searched podcasts, not just health podcasts, but globally searched podcasts. So please continue to share and spread the word, because truly this is my calling and that's what I'm trying to do. And I'm so excited about our guest today and our topic. We have so much in common and I don't even think he knows it. We're talking about what the experts have gotten wrong about leaky gut. And we have Stephen Wright here. He's a medical engineer, Kalish Functional Medicine Institute graduate, and gut health specialist. He spent close to $400,000 overcoming his own health issues. Gosh, I haven't even added up how much money I've spent on trying to heal myself with things that failed, using everything from Western medicine to shamans. And he is the founder of thehealthygut.com, lives in Boulder with his wife and 2 dogs. You need more dogs, Stephen. Welcome. How are you?
I'm great. How many dogs do you recommend?
Well, I've got 2 right now, and I have 3 kids and lost a second kid to college. So I say that every time a kid leaves, I need a new dog. My husband does not agree with me, but you know, we still have one at home. I might get it when the last one leaves. But
okay, I love it.
The house, right?
Yeah.
So anyway, I'm super excited to have you here because we're talking about what the experts have gotten wrong. My journey, gosh, I don't even know how long ago it was, about 16 years ago, found myself at rock bottom in the GI doctor's office. Besides the fact they couldn't remember my name every week that I went in, and the tubes up me, around me, down me, all they said was, "You've got IBS and go take some Metamucil." And I thought, okay, you don't think I've already tried that, right? You know, so I think nowadays, I think you and I were probably one of the pioneers in the gut era, because not very many people had gut issues back in the day. Whereas today, I think everybody does, with everything that's going on, the processed foods, the radiation, the stress, the antibiotics, all of these threats that are hitting us, and they're hitting our gut. And even people who had rock solid guts are now suffering. So I'm super excited to get into all of that. But first, can you tell everybody about your history? Because I know you didn't want to get into selling supplements, and this wasn't something that you thought you would be doing. Why don't we get into what brought you here?
Well, I mean, similar to your introduction, I think I'm living my mission and purpose. I just don't know that mine was chosen. I think mine was chosen for me. I don't know that I was able to choose mine. So I was born with a birth defect that had my intestines upset from day 0, hour 0, and I was raised really in a great way and had access to not a lot of processed food, but there was antibiotics everywhere. Ibuprofen, like every little bump and scratch in sports. I was raised in the early 90s era where, ibuprofen was for everything. And so anyways, it's just I have a lot of risk factors for having IBS and bloating. And, if we fast forward the story quite a bit, my break point, I feel like everybody kind of has a breaking point, like an emotion. It's actually emotional usually. I was a consultant in Chicago in a high-rise building. So every time I ate, it didn't matter if it was chicken and salad, and I was trying to lose weight at that time, so I was eating a lot of chicken salad, or like burgers and beer, I would bloat up and then have all kinds of stabbing knife pains. And then I was 16 stories up, and there's like not that many places to go, so I'd end up crop dusting my coworkers. I'm sorry, everybody, but anyways, they complained to my boss, and my boss on a Friday pulled me into his office and said, "Hey, there's a smell in the office, and everybody thinks it's you. You need to do something about this." And so, same thing. I went to Western medicine. I knew I was different, but I was trying to, I was trying to figure it out through just diet changes, and that wasn't working. They told me the same thing: take Metamucil. They told me I could have more antibiotics if I wanted them, but I was already anti-antibiotic at that point. And so that was 2008, and I guess, almost 15, 16 years now of changing my diet, introducing supplements that support the gut and the process of turning food into nutrients. And I'm just somebody who has a curiosity of like, why can't I have sugar? Why can't I have gluten or dairy? Is it possible? So I'm different in that way, in that I really want to live a full life if possible. I'm very clear on what it takes to get healthy for myself, and I've helped quite a few people over the years. But that doesn't mean I want everybody to, have to live with a specific parameters on their life.
I agree. And, Krishnan talks about the fact of just making the gut more resilient so that you can get away with some of this stuff. We all just finished the holidays, and I'm sure everyone's feeling a little bloated here and a little, not themselves, ready to kick off January with a cleanse, cutting the alcohol, cutting all the sugar. And then by January 3rd, they say, I can't do it. And they feel hangry and irritable. And then they get right back into their problems. And what I try to teach people is that once you know what it feels like to feel good, you don't care what you're allowed to eat or not, because it's not about the food. It's like, oh my gosh, that food doesn't disrupt my stomach. I actually have physical and mental energy, and I actually want to go do things. That's what life's about. It's not about like counting calories and getting yourself to lunchtime and then worrying about how you're going to feel after lunchtime. I remember when I was at my rock bottom, going to restaurants and being so uncomfortable just with bite 1 and 2. Like my stomach would cramp with this trapped gas, and it would only feel good when I got to lay on the couch and lay on my side. And that's not normal, people. That's not normal. And it's not just something that you have to live with. So let's start with debunking some of the common misconceptions about leaky gut.
Yeah. So, I mean, step one is just saying right there that like, if you're having any gut pains, that's not normal. Like it might be common, especially in today's world. As you mentioned, there's like 100 risk factors for having poor digestion, including aging, that we don't, things we don't want to talk about, like aging. So that being said, there's a lot we can do. And step one is just learning about our gut, I think, and learning about what is leaky gut. And if, people haven't heard one of your prior shows or anything else that I've done about leaky gut, the general concept is in leaky gut, the food and the particles and the microbes and the toxins and everything that's supposed to stay inside of your gut is going unchecked and leaking through into your body. And that really pisses off your immune system. It does not like it. It's there to respond. And when it responds, it causes more systemic inflammation that we generally find linked to every autoimmune condition. Almost every chronic health condition at this point is leaked in or linked in some way to leaky gut. And so we want our gut to not be leaky. We want the stuff to stay in our gut until it's ready to come into the blood. And so there's been a lot of focus on this over the last 10 years. And unfortunately, I feel like we've done that thing again that is like so human, and we've become reductionist that, leaky gut is just this thing about zonulin, which is a protein that basically helps the spaces between our gut. It makes them tighter or looser if there's too much of it or too little of it. In general, we want it to be tight. unless your body wants to flush a bad bug out of your body. But we have all this focus on like zonulin. Is there going to be a special zonulin drug in the future? Is there a special, zonulin probiotic or whatever it might be? And zonulin is important. And I think that's my message today, but it's just one really small portion or part of a leaky gut. And like, if I had to characterize it, like if you're not going to listen to the rest of the show, leaky gut is not just a failure of the gut tight junctions, which is what zonulin's part of. It's a failure of the gut defense mechanism in general.
Okay, so what are the other aspects to look at when you're looking at leaky gut?
So I like to describe it as a castle. So, if we were all living in castles, we'd be very interested in our drawbridges and our moats. And, if you're lucky, you have a dragon or an alligator or something. And then of course you have some high walls in your castle. You have all these different lines of defense that keep your castle protected. The gut is no different. The gut has multiple feedback mechanisms and defense mechanisms. The intelligence that created this body would never have allowed us to just have one little thing called zonulin that would like make our gut fall apart. And so, in my opinion, we have 5 layers that build up our gut. And the first layer is the atmospheric layer. And by this, I mostly mean oxygen, but also pH. And so we want a low oxygen environment inside the gut, which is, counter to what we want in our blood and most of our tissues and our organs. But in our gut, we want really low oxygen. And if we have higher oxygen, that creates all kinds of bad problems. Next, there's a chemical defense layer. So there's markers on lab tests called secretory IgA, and you can measure this. And if it's too high or too low, most clinicians are going to tell you that you've been fighting an infection for a really long time, or you're kind of in an acute fight around an infection. And so there's multiple types of immunologic peptides and things like that go out. Your gut actually releases them. Special cells release them. They go out and they bind to toxins, they bind to microbes, and they try to detoxify them or kill them or take care of them. So you could lose that expression. That makes you more vulnerable. The next layer is the microbiome itself. And so the microbiome, I like to think of as you want it thick and you want lots of it. So think of it like my best analogy is like a hippie commune. Like you need a cook and you need a carpenter and you need someone watching the kids, and someone's got to wash the clothes, and someone's got to farm the food, and someone's got to cook the food, and all you have to have this really big co-op in your gut to be really healthy. And at this point, there's been a ton of research on the microbiome and what is healthy. And I would characterize it as saying you want as many species as possible in the highest amounts as possible. I don't think, based on my review of the literature, that you can say specifically, this is what a healthy microbiome looks like. I think that we're not that far in the literature, but in general, we can do stool tests and see if you don't have that many species, or if you don't have a lot of growth of species that we know are good, such as lactobacillus or bifidobacter, things like that. So the layer after that is the physical layer, and that's where zonulin is at. That's where those tight junctions are at, but that's also your mucus layer. Like it's kind of gross, so I don't think we don't like to think about it a lot, but we have mucous membranes all over our body. And in general, it's there to provide an actual physical buffer between, whether it's our nose or our gut, between what's outside and what's inside. And so if we lose our mucus thickness or it becomes patchy, this is often associated with conditions like gastritis and ulcers and different things like this. This also happens inside the small intestine. And now you're giving normal, healthy foods access to your very delicate tight junctions and your very delicate gut cells, and it can really piss them off. And so you can have people, and maybe you've talked to these people, Sarah, where they're reacting to like what we would consider very normal foods, like, I don't know, beef or chicken or strawberries or something like that. Part of that is the mucosal membrane is just either gone or it's really too thin, and the opportunity is presenting itself to whatever we eat. So that's the physical layer that can break down. And then, of course, if all these layers are broken down, including the physical layer, now we have the gut immune layer at the end of that, on the inside, kind of bordering on the inside of the body and in the outside of the body. And in this GALT, or gut-associated lymphoid tissue, is where the majority of your immune system lies. Approximately 70 to 80% of all of your immune activity is happening in this area. If you're constantly pissing it off by really healthy food like wild-caught salmon or broccoli that you're just not properly breaking down and it's getting too exposed to, or it's like, red dye number 40 or whatever, or sugar or whatever, either way, it has to detoxify those things. It has to attack. And then that sends systemic cytokines and inflammatory messengers all around the body. And then you end up with all these things that seemingly are unrelated, such as like skin symptoms like rashes or blotchy, and brain fog some days, but not other days. And then maybe a pain over here and a pain over there. And you're like, well, I don't have a gut problem. Well, you definitely have a gut problem. It's just that it's not really what you identify with. Like, you're more identified with maybe the headaches or the brain fog and things like that. So in my opinion, that's the sort of 5 layers of the gut. And that's where experts are really getting too myopically focused in on 1 or 2 of those areas, because it's kind of a lot to take in.
Well, I love that you're talking about the symptoms, because there's so many people in my family that will say, well, I don't have gut symptoms. I can eat whatever I want, but I've got brain fog, and my pain in my right knee is hurting and it's getting worse. And so the unfortunate part, Stephen, today is that there's the spike protein that has wreaked havoc in our body in different ways that people are not connecting the dots. It's affecting our gut. And before we came on, I was talking about the fact that I was having some headaches connected to some other joint pain, and my liver being backed up. Well, I think I got exposed to the spike protein, didn't I didn't get sick, but I also then, my gut was weak. So I actually got some E. coli. Was it a okay piece of fish? Probably, but my gut wasn't ready for it. Too much fat, maybe, whatever. There's different stages of health for each person today versus a month from now versus a year from now. And so it's not always that I can eat these foods. Always I'm not supposed to eat these foods. There's different states of health that your body's going to go through. And now it's more complicated than ever. We've got more radiation. We've got more toxins in our environment, and we have the spike protein. And then that's not even talking about the processed food. So I'm just talking about the people that think they're eating organic and healthy foods and don't understand where these symptoms are coming from. So it's not that easy, unfortunately. But what's nice is there are supplements and things you can do to create a more resilient gut. But you touched on a couple of the symptoms for people to look out for. Let's go through them completely to make sure that it's not just bloat and gas.
Yeah. So again, leaky gut has been studied. Like, you can go to PubMed and you can type in intestinal permeability or leaky gut and type 2 diabetes or heart disease or autoimmune, like pick any autoimmune condition you want. RA, fibromyalgia, whatever it is, type it in there. There are papers linking leaky gut to every chronic health condition that I'm aware of. That's not even talking about just straight up gut related complications, like you said, like bloating, gas, maybe some constipation or diarrhea, IBS, IBD, things like that. That's almost a given, in my opinion. But that research is also available out there. Now, am I saying that everybody has leaky gut? I'm not saying everybody has leaky gut because of what you just mentioned. Our brains are they desire to simplify the world. They desire to simplify health. And that's where we can get alternative medicine practitioners who are just as dogmatic as Western medical providers, that it has to be this way. It has to be this diet. It has to be this parasite or whatever. And the truth is that our gut is adjusting every single moment of every single day to what you just said. Your environment, what is happening around you, the air you're breathing, the water, the stress, the EMFs, all that stuff. Also, what you're taking in, whether that's salmon or supplements or whatever that might be. And so there are actual studies that are showing that in 5 days, just being in a different environment, you're starting to already remodel your gut into a new microbiome. So this is, the technology is not quite there yet, but in another 5 to 10 years, we're going to know that moment by moment, our gut is adjusting to be more leaky or less leaky, depending on its internal state as well as its external inputs. And so if you're experiencing brain fog, if you're experiencing hot flashes, if you're experiencing, knee pains or things like this, I'm not saying that the sole cause is leaky gut, but I'm saying that based on where we are in the literature at this moment, it would be crazy not to believe that it's part of the cascade that is causing those issues. Because again, this is really hard for people to wrap their heads around. If we were in a video game right now and we were building our characters, like I want to be really fast, I want to jump high, I want to run fast, whatever it might be. 70 to 80%, or like, let's say we only get 100 immune cells, 70 to 80 of those 100 are all located in our gut. And so if they start talking to each other and they get out of balance one way or the other, because you've been in an environment that's a little too stressful, or you're in perimenopause, but you don't want to admit it, and you're low estrogen, like these things are going to drive the immune system a little batty and a little out of balance. And when that happens, it's just constantly emanating extra inflammatory cytokines just because it does. It's just a messenger to the environment internally and externally. And so we do need to evolve and start to, number one, appreciate the complexity of our bodies. But number two, what this does is also gives us access to change these things and change these symptoms and change these chronic health states.
Yes, I 1,000%. Now, what I'm super excited about learning about you is that on my journey, what did I say? About 16 years, even before that, I've used digestive enzymes. None of them worked. And I'd pop them. I'd say, well, maybe I'm not taking enough. So I'd like put a whole handful in and it still wouldn't make a difference. I tried your Holozyme and it is by far the best enzyme product I have ever tried. And my gut is hard to please. So that is a lot. And so what I want to do is talk about this supplement, but also how someone with leaky gut is going to benefit from digestive enzymes, and what are the differences between other digestive enzymes out there and why they weren't working for me.
Yeah, there's so many questions in there. So we'll need 3 hours. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
We'll try our best here. So unfortunately, your experience was my experience too. And I think it's like probably 99 out of 100 listeners of this show, which is that gastroenterologists in Western medicine give digestive enzymes, as well as every healthcare provider learns about digestive enzymes, about their importance, about how it doesn't matter what diet you eat. If you're not breaking that diet down into usable nutrients, your body is going to suffer. It's going to be malnourished. You're going to lose micronutrients, and you're going to potentially set up the conditions for a dysbiotic microbiome, would be my opinion. So they all know about it, and most of them come fired up out of school to, prescribe or recommend enzymes of whatever. And then exactly what you said happens is at some point, they're just like, this is not working in the real world. What is going on? And so that happened to me as well. And remember, I had a bunch of IBS related bloating amongst a lot of other things. And so I really, everywhere I went, it was like, this should make bloating go away. Why is this not working? And so I've spent a lot of years contemplating this and trying to figure it out. And what it's come down to is a few things. Number one is that the majority of enzymes on the market are built with just poor product build. Like they just don't understand. The first thing to comprehend is that, number one, we can't really test for how much enzymes we're making. We can only really test like a little bit for pancreatic enzyme sufficiency through elastase. But we also have brush border enzymes. And these are very special enzymes that help break down plant matter and carbohydrates. And then we have microbiome enzymes. Actually, our lactobacillus species and other species give off all these cool, crazy enzymes that you'll find in the research are linked to like lowering gas and cramping and things like this. And so we can't test for it. That's an issue. Number two, a lot of enzymes in the market don't include microbiome enzymes, brush border enzymes, and then pancreatic enzymes. And so right there, you're kind of setting up for failure. And then the third big thing is that they need cofactors. They need minerals to really perform at their best. The enzymes do. And so that was kind of the big breakthrough for me, that I found a scientific researcher who had figured this out. He had gotten a patent on it. And I'm a sucker for everything. So like, if you're like, hey, acai berry will, heal you, I'll chug it. I'll try it. I'll give it a go. So with this guy, I did the same thing I always do. I'm like, sure, man, I'll buy your stuff. Let's see if it works. This is one of the rare cases where I was like, holy cow, maybe he's had the missing component of digestive enzymes with these other ones that I've been working on. And sure enough, that seems to be the key. It was for me, and it has been for a lot of people.
So those missing cofactors, say someone is taking those minerals separately, but maybe at a different time of day. Is there something magical about actually taking them at the time that you're taking the enzymes and your food?
Yeah, there is. So basically, enzymes are in some inactive form. If they weren't, they would like eat our pancreas up, or they would eat our intestines up, right? But the body is very intelligent, and it has to have ways to inactivate them and then activate them. And one of them is through cofactors. The other two are pH and temperature. And so if you want like the best activity and power and efficiency from your enzymes you currently have, taking like a multi-mineral complex around your food and with your food is going to give you the best option, because basically there will be abundance of fuel. Think about a forest fire. If you have down trees and like stuff to burn, the fire can rage for a really long time. But if you remove those trees and stuff, like it might not die out, but it's not going to be as raging and as intense. Same thing is true kind of with these enzymes. Like there could be a lot of enzymes, but their activity could be really muted. If you introduce a bunch of minerals, then they can kind of really go at it and go after your food.
So how do you know how much to take?
Well, there's a patent, which is what we licensed. And so that's what we built into Holozyme, which is our enzyme. If you weren't going to do that, I would say get one of those like multi mineral liquid. Like they have like this.
Oh, I'm sorry. I meant how would you know how much of the Holozyme you would take with meals?
So here's the thing, like this isn't like the second biggest issue from product design. When it comes to enzymes, that again is not being talked about from your gastroenterologist all the way down to your health coach, which is that dose is extremely variable to the person, and there's no real upper limit. There's no real toxicity to digestive enzymes. There's nothing bad happens if you take too many. So obviously, if you're concerned, if you're pregnant, talk to your provider, things like that. But if you're being an adult, there's not a real upper limit based on what the literature says. And so what I mean by that is what we just talked about, your state of stress, your state of EMFs, if there's mold in your house, if you're dealing with a parasite or whatever, you might need 3 capsules, 4 capsules, 6 capsules, maybe more per meal to really break down that food. And what I want to do is give people the confidence that whatever brand, whether it's our brand or anybody else's brand, this is universally true. You can start upping them. Like if you're having bloating, if you're having food undigested in your stool, if you're having stools that are too soft or too liquidy or too hard and too constipated, like start upping, and you have an enzyme, whatever brand it is, start today with 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 and just start playing around. I'm not saying it will work because the product design might be missing the things I talked about. So it may never work for you, but it's worth a shot since you got it in the house today.
Okay. And so I'm assuming you would recommend that if someone's having a ribeye steak, they might need a little more versus a protein shake.
Yes. Yeah.
So it would go along with just a common sense as far as that goes. I love the fact that you can't overdo it. And so that gives people that freedom to test on themselves, and everyone's different. And you might need more for the same meal next week than you do this week, because it's all changing then, and there's so many different factors that are going into it. So
I want to double click on that real quick. What you just said is the key to, like, if you want to go to the next level, as like, whether you're the head of the household or you hold health, like let's say like you, in your case, I'm going to assume that as mom, you kind of like are not necessarily dosing everybody, but you're kind of keeping everybody dosed up on their health and kind of taking care of everybody's health. If you know that, if you're entering into stressful times, like maybe you're going on a like, I don't know, maybe like it's a softball weekend or a soccer weekend or something like that, where everybody's outside of their routines, the food is not as controlled, the environment's stressful due to the scheduling and everything. Like, that is the time to have extra enzymes around. That is the time to, start to play, especially with this stuff. Because you can almost assume whenever you get stressed out, your digestion is going to be worse. And that's just due to your nervous system. Your nervous system has mainly two modes, sympathetic and parasympathetic. Parasympathetic is where you want to be for digestion. And if you're sympathetic, meaning you're rushed, you're stressed, your body does not allow as much stomach acid to be made. It doesn't allow as much enzymes to be made. And so in general, digestion, like, you should expect more bloating. You should expect more IBS-like symptoms on anytime you're stressed, whether it's travel or, maybe the in-laws have just come to visit, something like that.
well, especially after the holidays, as we're talking, I'm sure everyone can identify with that. What we do as a family is we pray at the table. And there's a reason that around the globe, regardless of your beliefs, people pray before they eat. And it's to get into that parasympathetic mode, calm down, and you actually feel your body go, oh, and let's just actually focus on the food. I've tried to instill in my kids, don't be eating in your car, don't be just rushing through it. And this is interesting, Stephen, is my college freshman daughter has had issues with bloating forever, since she was a little girl. And we've tried this and that and this and that. And here she is in college now, away from my organic, beautiful, amazing food. And she's trying to eat clean as much as she can, but you know how that goes. And she goes, Mom, I'm feeling better. And I said, well, what do you think it is? Because I know you're not taking more supplements and I know the food isn't any better. She goes, I'm actually more intentional with my eating. And I said, ta-da, it's all about the stress and what you're creating. And think about the tigers and the lions when they're fasting as they're running and going after their kill. And then it's time to slow down and actually relax and then eat. So there's that fasting period, and however people incorporate that into their lives. And then this part of when you are eating, it's intentional, and make it enjoyable, make it positive, make it stress-free. If it's stressful, if you're in a stressful situation, maybe don't eat. Maybe wait until you get to a place where you can actually eat properly. So I love the Holozyme, and I can tell you that this is the first one. I've never promoted an enzyme ever before. And you would think that with my business and my own gut issues that I would have by now. I haven't, because I haven't found one that I absolutely love. And this is the first one that works for me. But the second thing that I want to talk about is stomach acid and acid reflux, and how people get this so wrong. I've got family members, including my father, who doesn't listen to me, about the misconceptions about what's going on with stomach acid and acid reflux. So let's dive into that.
Yeah. It's a confusing rabbit hole, kind of like enzymes, and acid is confusing because on one hand, most of the symptoms of low acid feel like high acid. Like we have a sensation, and then we make a story up about what the sensation means. Like we have We have to really like have a common ground here that we all have sensations, and then we all make up stories about those sensations. Sometimes those stories are correct. Sometimes those stories are never fact checked. And so one way we could do that today is fact checking this acid feeling, because I've been there. I've woken up in the middle of the night, like, oh my gosh, I'm going to puke. What is that? Oh my God, this is terrible. I can't sleep. So when I was in college, I was not doing the healthy thing. I was doing way too many credit hours and way too much cheap pizza and beer, and had plenty of really terrible acid reflux. What I know now, from a lot of people, including one of my mentors, Dr. Jonathan Wright, he has a great book called Why Stomach Acid is Good for You, is that the majority of people that he tested that showed up into his office with some sort of GI complaint, sometimes that's acid reflux, sometimes that's constipation, sometimes that's diarrhea, whatever it was, he would test them. There's only a few types of tests in the world that can actually check for low acid, and the equipment and the testing is expensive and annoying. And so it's just not done that much. But anyways, of like, say 100 people that walked into his clinic, he said 70 to 80 of those 100. So 70, 80% of people who complain of these issues actually tested as low stomach acid, which is the reverse of what the world is marketed to us, and the reverse of what is natural for us to make up as our story, that, oh, I feel acid, therefore I have acid. Another really common story amongst women is they want to eat meat, especially like a steak, but when they eat it, it feels like a brick and it just sits there. And so then women are so much more in tune with their bodies than men. Then they intuit that. They're like, oh, I ate steak. It's sitting in my body like a brick. Oh, my body doesn't want steak. Well, maybe you didn't have the proper stomach acid to begin to break that steak down. And so now you're feeling the effects of that. And if you replace that stomach acid, you retrained your body how to eat the steak, you'd feel great. And that desire, that initial desire to eat it, was legitimate. You just didn't have the ability to process it. So I would wager that low stomach acid is one of the most under tested for, whether it's in a healthcare provider's office or the actual like patient just doing it on their own thing in chronic health, especially in gut health.
What do you think causes low stomach acid? Is it just over eating the bad foods that create this vicious cycle of reducing stomach acid in the first place?
Well, I would say the most common contributor is sympathetic arousal, meaning you didn't say grace, you didn't smell your food, you're eating on the run. You literally have to be in parasympathetic mode for your body to begin to release the acid properly and build the enzymes properly. And so I would say the number one contributor is eating on the go, not eating in a, like you said, intentional state. That would be number one. Number two is you need minerals, you need zinc, you need magnesium, calcium, you need building blocks to produce the acid. And so if you're low micronutrient status due to stress, or, you have a couple decades of a bad diet or whatever it might have happened to you, kind of common, frankly, especially if you look into like soil depletion and like vegetable nutrient status and things like that. So without enough nutrients, again, you might maybe only make like 50% of the required acid because you just didn't have the building blocks. And then the other common thing is, unfortunately, an infection called H. pylori. And H. pylori is a bacteria that when it attaches to the stomach, it will actually like shut down the pumps that produce the acid around it, because it's trying to live, and acid will harm it as well. And so the stomach is a very acidic environment. We actually want the stomach to get down to below a 2 on the pH scale. If you've ever had an upset stomach, and maybe this is what my grandma did, like when I was a kid, I'd be like, oh, I have a tummy ache. And she'd be like, here, drink this Coke. It was always Coke. Well, if you look at it, Coke and apple cider vinegar are almost the same on the pH scale. They're right around a 2.4. Mm-hmm. That's pretty acidic. And it's really close to that 2.0 or below that we're trying to get to. And so it makes sense that if like you're you're hungover or you're stressed or something, like you might have learned that if you take a shot of apple cider vinegar, you have a Coke or something, that you'll actually feel better. That's a great test, initial test anyways, of whether or not you might have low acid.
I'm not promoting drinking Coke, just
No, no.
and I don't think you are either. But yeah, no, that is interesting. So this brings up the trend of alkaline water, and then also drinking too much with your meals. You drink too much.
Yeah.
But this is my issue, and I have a selfish question. Is here I take that first bite and I realize how thirsty I am. So now I'm actually trying to drink a good 8 ounces prior to sitting down for a meal. How much time do I need to drink that, 8 ounces to let it get out of my stomach in order for there to be enough acid and to be able to break down my food?
I mean, I don't know that there's a defined answer for that question. You are correct that minimizing the liquid volume during your meal is going to give your body an easier time producing acid, because acid is like a concentration across a volume of food and liquid. And so if you're drinking a bunch of water and stuff, or wine or milk or whatever it might be, you're going to increase the volume and the amount of acid needed to break that food down. And so I mean, if you can get the water in, 15, 20, 30 minutes ahead of time, that's going to be pretty good. The water is absorbed pretty quickly. And so it doesn't need like acid technically to be broken down. It's more of a gradient absorption, including in the stomach. So, it doesn't have to be like this. You can't drink within like 2 hours of your meal or something like that.
Okay. And so that takes us to the reason why you wouldn't want to be drinking alkaline water, especially around your mealtime. So with that, you have the HCl guard, which I love taking as well. And there's another supplement I carry that's berberine connected with HCl, but this is different. And can you describe how people would use this? And how do they know how much is too much? Because that's a little different than the holozyme.
Yeah, it's definitely different. So ideally, every one of us would have a doctor who could check our acid levels in their office, but we don't have that access, and typically it's like $300 to $500 for the test, and it's not covered by insurance. If you test low, the number one universal treatment is supplemental HCl. Betaine hydrochloride is the chemical name. And so what you can do is just bypass that first step and do something called an HCl challenge at home. So you can go to your drugstore, make sure the brand you get, if you don't get Healthy Gut, that's fine. Just make sure the brand has at least 500 milligrams of HCl per capsule, and it has some pepsin in it. So what you do is you take one of those pills with your normal dinner, and you just see what happens. You observe. And normally, hopefully you'll have a journal, because our short-term memory as humans is just not super reliable. But what you're looking for is no reaction or an improvement in whatever symptoms you have. So if that's low energy, you're hoping for more energy. If you have bowel movements that are out of regularity, you're looking for more regularity, less bloating, whatever it might be. If you have, and this does happen to like 10 to 20% of people who try this challenge, if you have some sort of burning sensation or heat sensation, that indicates that you do not need HCl right now, either due to the fact that you have enough acid, or you currently have some gastritis and you need to heal your gastritis. And gastritis, again, is thinning of the mucosal membrane in the stomach or esophagus. You can have other abnormalities, and if it gets really bad, you should definitely seek an endoscopy and get some imaging. However, if you have the heatness, the burning, you just take a teaspoon of baking soda and a little bit of water, and the baking soda nullifies the acid, the pain goes away. And like, that's not the product for you. Get a refund from our company or demand a refund from other companies. It's just not for you. But if you don't notice anything, then this could be a major breakthrough for you. So tomorrow you're going to take 2 caps And then you're going to keep going up until you get that hotness, that burning sensation on, let's say, day 5. So you, on the 5th capsule, you experience that. You take the baking soda, you're good to go for the rest of the night. Tomorrow, you now know that your individualized dose is 4 caps per large meal. Or maybe for some people, they'd never get that burning sensation. Like if you're getting up to like 7 capsules, 8 capsules, you're probably going to fall into this bucket of folks who don't ever feel that sensation. But what you will start to notice is like loose stools, or things are moving too fast through you. Things are not going well. And so you'll want to, most people are under 10 caps, no matter the brand, per meal. And then, as you mentioned, you would not take the same amount of capsules if you're having a protein shake. So if you're a smoothie in the morning person, you don't need all those capsules with that kind of meal. But if you're having a salmon and broccoli and a sweet potato, then yeah, like you're going to need all those capsules. So that's how to dose for it. The one thing we didn't mention, other than the fact that it's absolutely important to kill incoming bugs from your food and your water and everything you're drinking, and that it's absolutely critical to protein digestion and breaking down protein structures to absorb them, is that finally people are starting to study this. And there was just a study in 2021, I believe, that showed folks that have a pH of a 4. So this is kind of high acid, or this is low acid in the stomach of a 4, even though that's, whatever, versus pH of a 2, which is where we want them. The folks that had a pH of a 4, so they had low acid versus normal acid as a 2, they had up to, the worst person had 2,000 times more LPS, lipopolysaccharide toxins, dumping into their small intestine from their oral microbiome.
Wow.
Yeah. So if you're trying to avoid inflammation, if you've heard that that's a bad thing, if you've heard about how bad LPS is for your body, and you're doing all the probiotics and all the curcumins and whatever else you're doing to try to support that type of pathway, but your pH in your stomach is above 2, you are constantly dumping toxins into your small intestine just because they're not getting broken down by your stomach acid.
Mm. So with this, we're about finished. I can't believe it. I could talk to you forever about this stuff. It sounds like most people would need both the Holozyme and the HCl, because they're doing totally different things.
They are doing different things. They do run together. So if you have somebody who needs one, they typically need the other, because they work together. It's the stomach and the small intestine and their neighbors, they're working together to get the most out of your food and protect you.
Well, I love it. And I'm so glad that I came across you, Stephen, and your company. I knew as soon as I started diving into what you were doing that we were very like-minded, because you are working from your heart. You are coming from your pain to purpose story. And there's very few people out there that are doing it for the right reasons. And I can tell that in you. And so thank you for what you're doing. And thank you for the products. Everyone, you can find the Holozyme and the HCl on HCl Guard on Accelerated Health Products. And I'm really glad that we're here into January of 2024, kicking off a new month. And I'm sure a lot of you are wanting to cleanse and rebuild the gut and do the right things. Well, with some of these supplements, with some of the Accelerated Health Products to kick you into that fat burning mode, kick up the energy, it makes it easier. So check it out on my website, sarabantahealth.com. You can contact me directly. I'm happy to put together a protocol for you to let you know if you maybe need some of these supplements or just one of them, and what other gut supplements that will help heal the gut and give you the energy that you want in your brain and body. Join the free group coaching on Telegram with the link below. Like I mentioned, I teach you on a daily basis with tips and tools to enhance your health, and you'll be a part of an amazing like-minded group to support you on your journey. And if you're ready for one of the cleanses, the Ascent Diet Cleanse kicks off every first Monday of the month. So whether it's this month or next, make sure you join. It's always good to do, and you will feel like $1,000,000. You can follow me on Facebook and Instagram under Accelerated Health Products, across over 100 channels under Accelerated Health TV and Radio Show. And as I mentioned, my goal is to reach everyone on earth with eyes to see and ears to hear my message of healing. So help me with that goal. Share this podcast with a few of your friends who may need my help. We've got people listening in South Africa, in Dubai, in Europe, in South America, all over the world. So there are no limits. Join us every week on Mondays at 2 p.m. Pacific and Tuesdays at 1 p.m. Pacific. You can find all the supplements we talked about on my website, sarabantahealth.com. Use coupon WELCOME10 for 10% off site-wide. Thanks again for joining us here, and have a great week.